Hello, and welcome to episode 122 of Can We Still Be Friends, a podcast where two friends stopped arguing about movies and started working through them together. I'm Nate Goss, here with Ryan Ebling. 'Tis the season to celebrate our 11th annual holiday spooktacular. It's the most fearful season of all, with kids trick-or-treating and everyone eating candy all fall. This year, we've decided to watch our first monster movie, watching the king of all monsters, Godzilla, in last year's Oscar-winning Godzilla Minus One. Neither of us are experts on monster movies, but our horror movie journey couldn't be complete without diving into the world of iconic giant terrorizers.
Godzilla Minus One had pretty big buzz before it came to American shores. Once it arrived, critics praised it for being a return to form for the titular beast, citing its direct lineage to the original Godzilla from 1954. After a slew of American Godzilla titles of various quality in recent years, a standout Godzilla flick was a welcome sight. Audiences responded well, too, with the film grossing over $115 million, more than 10 times its original budget. Its peak came last March when it was the slightly surprising winner of the Oscar for Best Achievement in Visual Effects.
But how good can even a good Godzilla movie be?
Is it time to sink this behemoth at the bottom of the ocean once and for all? Keep listening. So that is the first real appearance of Godzilla in the movie we're talking about, Godzilla Minus One.
Yeah, and in fact, I think in that scene they kind of refer to him as like Gojira, like the original sort of like before it's like actually Godzilla, it's like Gojira, the monster. Yeah,
yeah, attacking the fictional island of Odo, which is a direct link to the first Godzilla movie, where a fictional island of Odo is attacked. And Godzilla Minus One, if you don't know anything about it, it is a prequel to the first Godzilla movie. So post-war Japan, situating the Godzilla story in history, bringing us back to kind of the original,
the roots
intent of Godzilla.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be interesting to talk about is kind of what this movie's doing with the Godzilla idea. Now, in that scene, so that was our lead character also was in that scene, which you didn't really hear much from him in the clip there.
Because he froze up.
He was nervous.
He had an opportunity. Koichi Shikishima is the main character, and he was in his plane, was about to fire the gun at Godzilla, maybe to kill him.
He was also there as a kamikaze pilot who was saying his plane needed to be repaired, but he just was
got cold feet.
Yep,
and didn't carry out his mission.
Yeah, so that's the opening clip for this, our 11th. Oh, did you want to?
Well, I was going to say, because he gets cold feet again, Godzilla kills a bunch of people.
Oh, yeah. That's the other part of the clip that you were hearing there. It's, the monster himself causing the mayhem.
Doing monster stuff.
Yeah.
Which, I didn't realize this. If you watch the clip, Godzilla grabs people with his mouth and then throws them. Apparently, Godzilla never eats anybody.
Yeah, there's a bunch of rules for Godzilla, and I'd love to maybe talk about those a little bit because this was all kind of fresh to me.
I'd love to know more about them. Yeah, I don't know a ton either. So maybe somebody's out there going like, "Oh, how do you not know?"
11 spooktaculars in, and we can't be experts on every type of horror movie or scary movie.
We're just dipping our beaks.
Exactly, and we're just celebrating the season.
Yeah, and that's what this is about.
Really.
Not really about learning stuff.
No, it's celebration.
It's about celebration. It's about getting scared. Candy. Candles. By the way, great job with the decorations.
Here?
The cobwebs.
Yeah. Well, you got to pull that cotton just right to get the cobwebs in the corner to really look like cobwebs.
You guys really did it up.
Yeah.
Too much in some
spots. Are you a little
spots.
spooked?
I'm spooked.
I mean, the goal was we're not this isn't cute. This is the real deal.
It's true. I just can't see you very well.
Right.
For all the cobwebs.
And the fog.
Well, yeah, the fog.
I can turn that down a little for our recording, but then it's going right back up for the spectacular,
Yeah,
for the spooky
that's fine.
season.
That's
So,
fine. I understand that. I'm just going to have to get used to the orange light, the opaqueness of the cobwebs, plus the fog.
And the strobes. Don't forget the strobes.
Yeah. You remember that I've had seizures in the past,
And
you
right.
slowed it down.
I did,
You
yes.
slowed it down.
It's about the whole deal here.
Yeah.
It's the whole effect.
And you feel it.
Yeah.
You feel it.
I turned down the chainsaw sound effects.
Yes. It was much appreciated. It was
For the quality of the
deafening.
podcast.
But you had it at the right level. You had it chainsaw level.
A gas-powered chainsaw
in a small room.
is it's going
to be ear splitting.
You're not going to be able to talk over it.
No.
So, I mean, I'm going for the real deal here.
Yep.
Not cute.
No. And it is not cute. I'm here to say that. You turned the motion sensor off of the 4 werewolves that you've got.
Still kept the red eyes on though. So those are looking right at you.
Yeah, but
how's that?
But with
the
orange light, the red is just kind of getting washed out.
That's in the fog.
Yeah.
And the strobes. One cute thing was the little orange, like the orange twinkly lights.
Twinkly lights. Yeah. That's a nice whimsical touch to
for the kids.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I'm glad you noticed it. I mean, I feel
it's hard not to. I slipped on the blood.
I feel like in years past, it's kind of been like I put all this work in, and you didn't say anything, and
too spooked.
It's just
too spooked to even mention it.
Right.
It's one of those things where if I don't talk about it, I won't have to deal with it.
So you're saying I kind of dialed in the right amount of spookiness to where you're
after,
genuinely haunted, but not to the point where you can't actually talk about it.
Exactly. I think that's a twofold. 11 years of practice on your part, you nailed it. 11 years of desensitization on my part.
You nailed that.
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish you all could see this. I wish there was a way for us to send a picture to all of you, but
it's a podcast.
I just can't think of one. It's
audio only.
Audio. That's it. We don't record this.
Theater of the mind. Play it up.
I think we did a good job.
It's pretty darn scary. Yeah. So anyway, well, we're here in this moment of the spooktacular to talk about our movie this year, Godzilla Minus One. We've gone this long and we've never done like a full-blown monster movie.
Right.
So this is exciting.
Which I wouldn't say the slasher, Michael Myers sort of thing. That's not the same sort of monster, right?
Not in the way that like, if you're looking at like
Frankenstein,
Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon. Mm-hmm. Now we went big.
We did.
I mean, we had a lot to catch up with. So let's just go big.
Go big. King of the Monsters.
King of the Monsters. And then I kind
of... It is Godzilla, right? It's not King Kong?
I don't know. Well, here's the thing. So, like, I found out that there's, like, a whole, like, genre for just huge monsters.
Yeah.
Kaiju.
Yeah.
King Kong and, like, Mothra and Godzilla and, like, that whole cast of huge city-destroying monsters. That's, like, a subgenre of the monster movie.
Yeah.
Kaiju.
Yeah. Last year also, I don't know if you watched it. I watched it on Apple TV Plus. There was Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, which is in the kind of current Hollywood Godzilla universe.
Okay.
Kurt Russell's in it. Wyatt Russell's in it. Wyatt Russell plays a young version of Kurt Russell's character.
Interesting.
It's his son. And it's like this shadow agency that deals with all those kaiju monsters.
It's called Monarch?
Mm-hmm. Monarch is the shadow agency.
That sounds like a cool idea.
It is a pretty cool idea. Yeah. I mean, it was good. It was fine, So yeah, I mean, there's so much to know, and we don't know much.
No, but I tried to do a little bit of digging before we recorded to kind of feel like I'd have some way to kind of situate this experience that we watched. Now, I guess... I mean, you had seen Godzilla Minus One before the episode.
Yeah, I had. Yeah, this is the second time I saw. Yeah,
and same here. So maybe we should kind of do the tradition and just talk about first viewings, which was just the season. Tis the season and the tradition.
Yeah.
So it was just last year. So
yeah,
not that long ago.
I think it was all that long ago. I really don't remember exactly when I watched it. Maybe over the summer.
But you didn't see it in the theater.
No, I didn't. Okay. I didn't see it until it was on Netflix. But yeah, I had wanted to see it. I wanted to see it in theaters.
How'd you hear about it though? Because this is the thing: I feel like
I don't remember how I heard about it.
People kind of heard about it mostly word of mouth. I feel like, because it really wasn't like there were a ton of like if you were going to see, say, last year, if you saw Oppenheimer or Barbie, you weren't seeing trailers for Godzilla Minus One.
Yeah, no, it was just internet stuff. Like hearing trailer for Godzilla Minus One. This looks amazing. Like just sort of like it got posted and
it had great buzz
and Yeah.
It's like a 97% fresh from both critics and audiences on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. And so that was it. It was just, no, this is a really good one because, I don't know, I saw the 2014 Godzilla and it was good. I saw Kong, Skull Island, and that was good.
You saw all those?
Well, I saw those two.
Okay.
But then there's like...
Did you see the one from like the 90s?
Godzilla X Kong and like
it was like the Roland Emmerich one.
Yeah. I saw that.
You did?
Yeah.
I don't even I remember.
I saw that in theaters.
I remember the like the Puff Daddy song with Kashmir.
Yeah, Jimmy Page played on it.
Yeah, I remember that on MTV. And I never actually saw the real movie.
Yeah. That was a terrible song, and I remember in high school I was in jazz band, and the other guitarist was a huge Led Zeppelin fan, and he played Kashmir as like a warm up, and I was like, "Oh, Puff Daddy," and he got so mad at me, but I knew he was going to get mad at me. I knew it was.
You knew what you were doing.
Yeah, and that was a terrible movie.
Now, had you seen the original, the 54 Gojira?
Yeah, but I don't know when. I actually I watched about half of it last night after watching after finishing Godzilla Minus One. I started watching the original.
I want to say
Godzilla.
That's pretty much always on the Criterion channel to stream if anybody wants to check it out. I think it's totally worth it.
There are a million Godzilla movies on Criterion channel.
Oh, really?
Yeah. All the
because I think at one point they put out a box set.
Yeah, those are all on there.
But I think over time, like from my understanding, and I'm talking as someone who really has only seen the original, but like my understanding is that as time went on, the emphasis changed a little bit. It's sort of like the same thing that happened with like if you continued watching Jaws.
Yeah, right.
Which I was the weird kid that did.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's funny.
I've seen the second, the third, and the Revenge of Jaws.
Oh, wow. Jaws the Revenge.
Jaws
right?
the Revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you watch Jaws 3 in 3D?
No, because I watched it on VHS. Oh. But I knew the whole time, because it says like Jaws 3D on the cover, even though it's not actually in 3D when you're watching it. Mm-hmm. But so the whole time when stuff's like coming towards the screen, I'm just like, that would have been so cool in 3D. In fact, should I do a spoiler alert for Jaws 3?
Yeah.
So from what I remember, and it's been a long, long time, I was a kid, they basically just blow them up. And I think this one takes place actually
in the
like...
first one, they blow them up.
But they blow them up in the third one.
Okay.
And like...
What else are you going to do?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
From what I remember, it's kind of this like underwater, like almost like an aquarium, like a touristy kind of aquarium. And Jaws gets blown up, and his literal jaws, the actual like
fly at the screen,
fly
right?
at the screen and like snap.
Boy,
that's
one
writing.
last bite.
That is writing.
One
right
last
there.
bite
that's
before he goes.
Right.
Wow. So similarly, Godzilla got bastardized.
Kind of, but also he also became like this, almost like an anti-hero.
Yes.
And you even get that with like the newer ones.
Yes.
Because I didn't see the two you saw, but with the latest one, it was like Godzilla X Kong.
Yeah.
It was the same kind of deal where it's like Godzilla's kind of like a necessary evil.
Yeah.
Like he's terrible, like he destroys everything, but we also kind of need him to kill all the other bigger monsters.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of Monarch. He's like keeping all of the other monsters in check.
A lot of it's just kind of watching these rivalries.
Yeah.
Not the same thing that you get with the original at all, and not the same thing you get with Godzilla Minus One. So like we said earlier, it's definitely kind of a throwback to, I think, the roots of Godzilla.
Yeah, in the IMDb trivia, this is not irrelevant, I don't think. But the director, Yamazaki, said that the American Godzilla is focused on being monstrous. The Japanese interpretation is as a monster and a god, not like a religious god, but a Japanese god, malevolent and destructive. And that god and monster is vital. And he even said he thinks Godzilla should only be made in Japan. Strong stuff.
Well, but we should get into it because we talk about Godzilla Minus One and why he might be right. But let's go back to your first viewing. What was your thoughts?
I watched it at home and I just really liked it. It was, I guess I didn't know that it was going to be as sort of dramatic. Usually movies that have that sort of buzz around a franchise like that, there's some sort of fun that's brought back into it.
Oh, sure.
And I don't know what I expected. I didn't know anything.
Okay, so you just enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Now, would you say you liked it? Like, how did you compare it to everything else you had seen of Godzilla? Before that,
felt more substantial. Like I cared about it a lot.
Like, would you
more.
say it's kind of like your? Oh yeah, it was your favorite Godzilla.
Yeah, definitely. It grounded Godzilla in a much more impactful context, and because of the way the original was so important that it was set when it was set. To have Godzilla just rampage in 2014, I feel like that sort of element of it was lost in a lot of the Hollywood.
Well, sure. I mean, because especially the original Godzilla, it it had stuff to say. It was definitely an allegory about trying to live with this reality of nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm. I learned that the very beginning of Godzilla, 1954, people in Japan would have known, oh, this movie is saying something, because the first thing that happens is a fishing boat goes down, and the first person to die on the boat is a radio operator. And near Japan, when the U.S. tested the H-bomb, there was a fishing boat that saw the flash and heard the explosion 8 minutes later, so they were that far away. But the crew started dying of radiation poisoning, and the first person who died was a radio operator. So the first person who died from the H-bomb was a Japanese fishing boat radio operator. And the first person to die in Godzilla the movie is a Japanese fishing boat radio operator.
This is a direct connection. Yeah, we are talking about this.
Right, yeah. And so for that to not be a part of future Godzilla movies feels incorrect.
Yeah, or at least, okay, it's a different angle, and maybe it may or may not be substantial.
Yeah.
So cool. Yeah, for me, so my friend Josh, he kind of, he knows I think he listens to the podcast occasionally. He knows that I like film, and he's just shot me a message saying, "Have you seen the new Godzilla movie?" And I was like, "Well, what? Which one?"
Which one? Yeah, it feels like there's one every 6 months.
I thought he was talking about one of the latest, like sort of the Hollywood ones, and I was like, no, I haven't. And, he said Godzilla Minus One, the Japanese film. And he said, I just saw it. And he's just like, I can't. He seemed genuinely like it was one of the best movies he'd seen in a long time, and that he had been very moved by it. Like he couldn't shake it even. And I was like, wow, okay, I guess I better see this. And, my sons, they're 10. And I don't know why, but they've always liked Godzilla. Even I showed them the 1954 movie, and they were just like really into it, subtitles and everything. And so I just went to them and said, like, "Hey, there's a new Godzilla movie in the theaters. I'd like to go see it. Do you guys want to come with? I'll let you know right now, though. It's going to be in Japanese, and they're so it's going to be subtitled, and you're going to have to read the screen the whole time." And they were kind of like, "Okay, we'll try it." And we went, and it was great. But I was worried the whole time because, compared to a lot of the stuff they've seen, like Marvel stuff, and compared to like even the more contemporary Godzilla movies, there's very little Godzilla.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of story, and it's a lot of character. And so the whole time I'm kind of worried, like, and do they even? I had to kind of whisper to them what kamikaze even meant, because you kind of have to know that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But yeah, they got it. They hung with it, and then when Godzilla was there, they were like totally into it. The special effects were really good, and it was a great theater movie to go see, and we all liked it. And then I had to rewatch it for the podcast, and they were game for rewatching it even. So not all of it; they had to go to bed, but they watched part of it with me, and so I've got a kind of a fondness for this movie, because it's like a movie that I really didn't think my kids would hang with.
Yeah.
But they did, and I think that's a testament to it being a pretty solid movie.
Yeah.
You What would you give it letterboxed? First viewing, is it even different second viewing?
I don't think it's different. It's 4 stars the first time, and I think it's 4 stars now.
Yeah. I think that's what I would go with too, is 4 both times.
Yeah.
So.
Well, then let's talk about it, what we liked about it.
I mean, for a spooktacular, not the scariest movie we've watched.
It's not. No, it's not.
It's a different kind of experience. It's more like kind of the thrills. I mean, like I said, my boys are 10. Yeah. They were not scared watching this. Yeah. Not even scared in the way that I was scared, say, with like Jurassic Park.
Right.
Where there's like real suspense.
Right.
I don't think there's a ton of suspense in a Godzilla movie.
No.
A little bit, maybe. As far as like the fear in the lead up.
Yeah.
But once Godzilla comes, it's kind of like you're just watching destruction.
Right.
And right? Am I kind of?
No, I think so. I mean, there's tension in the first attack where the fish show up.
Right.
But I think one of the things that makes this work as a Japanese film is that they don't need to explain Godzilla.
Right.
They see it, and right away Koichi's like, "It's Godzilla." And everybody's like, "Oh, shoot. Dang, yeah, that is Godzilla."
It's got all the signs of Godzilla.
Right.
It must be Godzilla.
Yeah, the movie's called Godzilla. It's Godzilla. We don't have to like. It would be pretty manufactured for that to be the suspense, right? So that's what makes a successful movie like this is what do you do with it? We all know who it is. We all know like there. We don't need to draw out the where did this come from? Is he coming? How did he get there? How did he choose this island? Whatever. It's just like, oh, Godzilla's attacking this island. How is this person going to survive? And the way that they made this one unique is with Koichi's shame and indecisiveness or I guess cowardice potentially. But then what the movie's doing with that is, well, is it cowardly to want to live when your death would be futile?
Right.
And what does duty really mean? You know?
Yeah, there's a lot there. There's what does duty really mean? There's also like what does family even mean? And for like a post-war Japan, to see that depicted where this is a country that's so war-torn, probably most families were destroyed in some way or another. And so you had to kind of cobble these families together out of what was left.
Their house gets cobbled together and
So the whole like post-war thing, I think, is just a really interesting place to situate this in, even more than say maybe even the original, because that one's even about, not quite 10 years removed, but close to it.
Yeah. And sort of more about the atomic age.
Right.
Than the war itself.
True. Yeah.
But it's not just Koichi is a coward and then he's not. But when he had the gun sights on him in that first scene and wasn't pulling the trigger, I was like, well, we know this wouldn't work anyway.
Right. Well, you just said the word futility of it.
Yeah.
There's the futility of it all.
Like, does he get that sense? Or does he think, if I shoot at this, he's going to come for me and I don't want to die? And why? And I guess it was possible at that moment still that Godzilla would have left. Yeah. Right? And then somebody opens fire.
Yeah.
And most of them die.
Well, and I think that's kind of like, if the original Godzilla is this allegory for the nuclear age, and this is sort of an allegory for a lot of different things, one of which being, like we talked about, sort of the guilt, maybe survivor's guilt, PTSD is another part. But also, I think there is a lot being said about what is honor. It's like exactly right. You're like, so he's going to shoot at this thing with a machine gun. It's not going to do anything. If anything, it's just going to draw attention to him and possibly get him killed. Not necessarily because Godzilla wants to eat him, but just because Godzilla would be annoyed. It's like swatting a fly,
right?
And I could see where there's a good point being made to there, especially when you're getting to be the end of the war, where they know Japan's lost, and you're still a kamikaze pilot. Right. What is the honor in doing that?
Yeah. And a lot of people are angry. Like it happens more than once that even if they didn't know him before, but they find out he was a kamikaze pilot and he's still alive, they're angry at him for that.
Yeah.
And is it critiquing that sort of cultural idea of bravery or the way that war warps our idea of bravery and utility and service? Or I don't know.
I mean, if it is, I don't think it's hammering it that hard.
No.
Because I do think that this movie does have something to say about what bravery is. And what does a war worth fighting actually look like?
Yeah.
And in this case, it looks like we need to stop this absolute devastation. But you've been through a lot. We're not going to make you do this.
Yeah.
But then you've got quite a few people that say, no, I will do this.
Right.
And that's bravery.
Yes. Also compounded by the fact that they weren't under orders. There was no Japanese military.
Right.
At this point in history, Japan wasn't allowed to have a military. So this was a coalition of civilians who just said, we've got to do something about this.
And I think that
this is our best idea.
That is a really fascinating thing to think about, because I think what the difference this movie is making is when war is just kind of driven by the state versus war that has to come organically from the citizens themselves, because they have to preserve something. And that something is a higher ideal than just the state.
Yeah, right.
It's a higher ideal that's about your loved ones around you, the community that's actually before you, the friends that are right next to you.
Right.
The families that you have to protect, because this thing is coming for your towns. It's coming for your cities.
Yeah.
It's not some far off thing that you're going to go fight for the state.
Right.
The movie is providing, I think, a very nuanced view of courage. And I don't even think it's saying that you can take this template that the movie's providing and kind of lay it over anything. I think it's just saying courage is complicated.
Yeah.
Courage is not something that you can just say, everybody in this situation, you were a coward if you did this and you were brave if you did this. I think Koichi is someone who throughout the entire movie wrestles back and forth with this.
Yep.
Moments of bravery. He obviously feels like he failed, and certainly his, like the mechanic, Tachibana. He's sort of your surrogate for you failed.
Yeah.
Like you are a disgrace.
Yeah.
But then he knows his duty to take care of this child that falls before him, and there are ways in which he has stepped up. He's not just living for himself.
Right. I think he comes across as more thoughtful and more like reflective, and somebody who in the moment can tell this is worth it or this is not. And this is where I kind of saw a fairly pointed criticism of Japan is when Noda, he says...
Noda is the scientist. He's kind of the scientist person.
Yeah.
Cool hair. He's got great hair.
He's got great hair. And he comes up with a plan to attempt to kill Godzilla. But he says that this country has treated life far too cheaply.
Yeah, great line.
Poorly armored tanks, poor supply chains resulting in half of all deaths from starvation and disease, fighter planes built without ejection seats, and finally kamikaze and suicide attacks. That's why this time I'd take pride in a citizen-led effort that sacrifices no lives at all. This next battle is not one waged to the death, but a battle to live for the future. And that, I think, is ultimately where Koichi lands, because he leaves that note for Akiko, leaves the money for his neighbor to take care of her, thinking, I'm going to go kill myself so that I can hopefully kill Godzilla. Thinking for the future, but also not thinking for the future, not thinking how his life is going to affect Akiko. And that's, again, where I felt like there might be some criticism of Japan's mindset during the war.
Sure.
Of not really thinking of anything other than victory and valor by a very, very narrow definition.
Well, and I think you have that almost personified in the Tachibana character, the engineer, because if you think about the climax of the movie, he has a change.
Yep.
Like his initial viewpoint was the sort of traditional idea of what Japanese honor looked like during the war. And then I just love that that's the final touch of the movie, is like he's the one, that guy that tells him to live, first of all, but it's as simple as, we're going to put an ejection seat in this plane.
Yeah.
Like the point of the story here, maybe even more than Godzilla being defeated.
Right.
The point of the story is that this guy lives.
Yeah. I thought one of the emotional payoffs of the movie was the differences, but then the parallels between the reaction to him coming back alive when he came back from war alive and was called a disgrace versus when he came back alive at the end. I think everybody had a different view of life.
Joyful.
Yeah. That parallel being so highlighted by the end is really kind of focusing on that aspect of it. The idea of bravery versus pointless recklessness. And which one is which.
Right.
One of the quotes that stood out to me, and this might be on a different topic, is when he first comes home and his neighbor's calling him a disgrace. She says, "Look what happened because of cowards like you." And I don't know if this is just me or if that's supposed to be sort of a ludicrous sentiment that, like, if he had killed himself, this wouldn't have happened. Japan wouldn't have, been bombed or like whatever. Just like, if you'd only done your job, my children wouldn't have died, she says.
Yes, right.
Which is
devastating. And
not true.
Also not true. That's a pretty common characteristic of heavy nationalism.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I keep thinking of the line from Patton, no one wins a war by dying for their country. They win the war by making some other poor bastard die for his country. I haven't seen Patton recently enough to know what its stance is, but that feels to me like a fairly clear perspective on the idea of dying in battle for your country, whatever.
Yeah. I think the idea of kamikaze is a really useful one, because that's like, it's a foregone conclusion. You are not coming back from this war alive.
Right. And they called it valor, but like Noda points out, it was also economic. We don't have to build planes with ejector seats. We don't have to fill planes with enough fuel to get back. We don't have to keep adding bullets and bombs because this one's just going.
Yeah, right.
And like there was an economic advantage for the Japanese military that they could then also call bravery and duty.
So it just makes me... even the idea of Godzilla Minus One, it's really creative because
it is.
The original Godzilla, it was a really creative idea to take this monster movie and make it about what we are all dealing with after the atomic bombs had dropped in our country.
Yeah.
And then this one's saying, like, we can use the same monster to also talk about even before that with, like, the idea of Japanese idea of honor during the actual war itself.
Like that idea of -1, I always took it as just like Godzilla was Godzilla 1 and then this is Godzilla -1. Like the one before. I don't know. But to me, as we're talking, it also feels like, okay, the atomic age is scary and nuclear weapons are unconscionable. But let's go back a little bit. Because that was not the first time we had bad ideas.
Yeah.
Like what are the mindsets that would lead someone to build an atomic bomb versus the mindset that is future thinking and thinking, how do we preserve the most amount of life and make life better for the most amount of people?
And still taking into account that these threats are real. Like, there are real threats.
Right.
We've got a freaking monster who's destroying our city.
Right. We do need to have ideals, but we also need to know that there are real threats. And maybe, though, what we need to be clear-eyed about is what are they a threat to? Mm-hmm. Are they a threat to our ideals, our humanity, our money, our power? And how you perceive the threat is going to affect how you perceive the solution. And if the perceived threat is to anything other than our humanity and you don't act accordingly, then you are going to create expendable life and trauma and shame and regret.
It has to come from an ethic that says life is worth living.
Yeah.
Everybody's.
Right.
For a monster movie, heck of a lot to dig into.
Yeah.
I watched a little bit of trying to figure out how they made that movie look so good on a $15 million budget.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool. I'll put some
the director is the screenwriter is the visual effects head, right?
Yeah, let's get into it. Takashi Yamazaki, director, one of the writers, and the visual effects supervisor. And, it won the Academy Award for visual effects. And it looks great.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And like the same year, Indiana Jones, 5 came out. I already forgot it was made.
Right. I didn't see it.
That was a $300 million budget.
Yeah.
You had I think, was that last year when one of the Fast and Furious movies, I don't even remember, but that was like a $350 million budget. Mm-hmm. You've got this Godzilla Minus One, $15 million, and it doesn't look cheap.
No.
Now, we're not just talking about, wow, they made a really great special effects blockbuster level movie for $100 million. Even that would be impressive.
Right. Yeah.
$15 million.
Yeah.
So they've got some.
People have joked like that's like the catering budget on some of the movies it was nominated against.
So what were what was it up against?
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1, Napoleon, and The Creator.
Okay, but I do want to talk about why this movie works as even just a convincing city-destroying monster movie with computer effects, and it rivals some of the best stuff you've seen, and even beats a lot of stuff you've seen from Marvel movies, and really what a lot of today's Hollywood is kind of putting out as their big effect-heavy movies.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that was pointed out in one of the videos I watched was that you've got sort of this move within a lot of directors that they almost are ashamed to talk about them using computer and CGI. They're kind of oh, I use it sparingly, or this movie's great. Like the Dune movies, it was a big thing that it was a blending. It was a lot more practical effects than CGI. But Yamazaki was someone as a visual effects supervisor who didn't shy away from CGI and kind of embraced it. But because he was also the director and had an understanding of how it worked, a couple things he did differently. One of which was that he knew already what kind of effects and how they were going to work were going to be in the movie. So the shots were designed in pre-production with visual effects in mind.
Yeah.
Often it's kind of like the director maybe kind of has somewhat of an idea, but they shoot the way they want to shoot it, and then they send it off to a factory, and they kind of have the factory do what they want to do. Yeah. And then they might not even see the results for like weeks, months later even.
Right.
And then they might not like it, and then the factory has to kind of try to make it work.
Yeah.
But like the lighting's not right.
It could be, like you lit this in a really difficult way, or you framed it so that we had to figure out how to make this.
And he also had a really small team. Like this is like a 35-person special effect team of artists.
That's nuts.
And they were pretty much there every step of the way, to the point where they would actually like shoot a shot, and then he would like immediately have them working on the effect. And then he was the supervisor. He could like have them try something, and he'd be looking over their shoulder while they did it. And if it didn't work, he'd tell them to try something different, and then he'd go over to a different artist, what they were working on, and do the same thing. So he'd just work around the room basically. But he's treating the visual effect artists as like true collaborators in this. And they're like his team just as much as like his film crew would be his team. Yeah. It's like his visual effect team that he's working with.
Yeah.
And then it also made it so that like, because they kind of already understood what the visual effects were going to do, they were able to really limit their budget even in the practical ways. So like, you know, you get a couple shots of like big ships and the exteriors, but like they built one set that's like your ship set.
Ship set, yeah.
And then like they basically filmed all of those ship scenes, whether it's this ship or this ship or this ship, it's all the same set basically. Huh. Then they were able to kind of use, you know, nothing crazy, just like green screen effects, stuff like that, to basically make it look like a different ship. And then sometimes they even had these like very kind of old school ways where it was just like, we've got this huge ship, it's deploying. We can't afford a ship like this. So they just took that same set and had the camera run right to left. And then put a foreground in of everybody waving them off. Yeah. And it looks like the ship's sailing off. But they show it. You watch the. I'll link to it in the show notes. You watch it. You couldn't tell otherwise.
Yeah.
You know. And then they did talk about like Godzilla itself is pretty much a CGI creature, but they did have like a few models they worked with. But the thing is, for that, they just made the model incredibly detailed computer wise, and so like a couple seconds worth of a shot of Godzilla would take up like 5 terabytes of data.
Holy cow.
Because they just had it down to like the smallest pixel detail.
Wow. Well, I feel like one of the most often used screenshots from the movie is from the boat, Godzilla like making eye contact with them in the water.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's gutsy. This is Godzilla up close in water. That was another thing that was like almost like a CGI flex. Like most of our Godzilla scenes are going to be water.
Yeah, and water's hard.
Right.
Yeah.
With practical, we've got a real boat with a real wake, and we've got Godzilla. Like all these elements that they made it more complicated for themselves, but kind of like a watch us do this.
Yeah. Oh, and it's even down to where like they knew they couldn't really afford the crew to be out on the water with the actors very much. So kudos to the actors. Like a lot of times just for the budget reasons, like the boat actually wasn't moving at all. And they just had to give their lines and sway in unison and act as if they were like on a boat moving. And then they would just fill in the foreground and background with boat.
That's funny.
And it just looked like
holy cow, they
were actually like on this boat.
That's crazy.
And then they had like, I love watching this stuff because of the creativity when you've got a small budget.
Yeah.
You know, you'll see scenes that they kind of are reminiscent of Titanic, where like the boat, it's like, you know, they're kind of sliding down the boat. Yeah. The crew is, because it's you know, up in the air or something like that. That's just like a platform on a hinge. But then they use that exact same platform for the scene where the people are on the roof of the skyscraper they fall down. Yeah. Like anytime they use a shot like that,
it was the same hinged.
But that's all floor. CGI. Like that's still relying on CGI. Yeah. But the difference is his attitude. Yeah. Like his attitude is one of like curiosity and kind of creativity and like what can we do with this?
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of Take Shelter,
the movie with Michael Shannon.
Yeah. Which was a tiny budget.
Yeah.
Had a lot of CGI that was flawless, but the director Jeff Nichols, he's not necessarily an effects guy, but he brought in effects people as producers. And so
that's great.
Now you've got people who, one, they're helping make decisions with CGI in mind, but also they have an investment in the movie. And so he got a lot of free CGI because the producers needed the movie to look good and they knew how to make it look good. So they did it. Not exactly the same, but instead of treating CGI as post, treating CGI as pre-production, production, and post.
It also kind of reminds me of, we've talked about this, we've talked about how airtight like the Coen brothers scripts are.
Right.
And how that actually just comes from them being indie low-budget filmmakers and knowing that the way you save money is you got a good script.
Get your stuff together, And
so I think that's also part of the ethos here, not necessarily in the screenwriting, but even in the, you know this is going to be a visual effects heavy movie.
Yeah.
Let's just make sure it's planned out every single step of the way, and you can actually have really good special effects on a budget if you do that, and it's going to look better. Just like Coen Brothers movies are way tighter for it.
Yeah.
Even though now they could make a $100 million movie probably if they wanted to.
Yeah.
But it just creates an attitude towards working in the different types of like specialties that you need to bring into a movie. It's a scrappy way of filmmaking, but it's like it actually ends up giving you a better product in the end anyways, even though you...
Well, it reminds me also a little bit of our conversation about Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
Much more collaborative, it sounds like, with the CGI and kind of the way the Daniels made Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was like, no, this is you tell us what needs to happen here. Like, help us create a good product, not I wanted to do this, regardless of whether or not that's possible.
Yeah. Well, and I think also, like, whether you're talking about the Daniels, the Coen brothers, or in this case, Yamazaki, they're shooting for something that's bigger than the budget that they really have.
Yeah.
And they also realize they have to rely on the story. They can't afford not to have a good story to have this movie do well.
Right. What do you think is the human element in Godzilla Minus One?
Well, I mean, I guess I don't know what you'd call it. It's kind of the Jaws principle. You don't have to show a lot of the monster to make an effective monster movie.
Which, by the way, I kind of loved how this movie was Jaws for a large portion of it.
Even out on the boat.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know?
Yeah.
Jaws is a timeless classic, and I guess it's kind of just steal from the best in a way, but steal the good things. And so I do think that it only works if you are invested in the Koichi character, but it also works because you've got an entire supporting cast that brings that character out even more.
Yeah,
but also they are interesting.
Yes. Well, because as you see his family with Noriko and Akiko forming, you see his boat family forming, and then he brings them home, and they kind of like add to his home life and his work life, and they kind of see this guy's life isn't expendable.
Those characters, they don't need to be. You don't need a whole backstory. They don't need to be fully fleshed out, but they have that Spielberg feel of like they're just characters.
Yeah,
they're just like interesting, kind of funny.
Yeah,
but they also have their own like you're actually like very engrossed when Noda, the scientist, is kind of explaining his theory. Like that's the other thing too, is it's just like it's actually interesting to find out like their idea for how they're gonna like try to kill this just indestructible monster.
Yeah. But
I like hearing it from Noda.
Yeah.
It's not just some no-name scientist that they brought in from like, the institution.
Right.
This is a guy that you've already gotten to know with, and he might not be the most brilliant scientist ever. Yeah. But this is a guy that you've spent enough time on the screen with to say this is a guy who knows his stuff, and he's human. When it needs you to invest your heart into the movie, it leans a little bit more into these characters, but then it can also just pull out and say, isn't it kind of cool to watch all these buildings get smashed? And also because you're so one of the best kind of action sequences, I think, is the train sequence, and it's Noriko on it. Yeah. You're invested in this character, like not just she's the heroine you don't want to die, or the love interest, but this is someone who you're like, she's got a whole family.
Well, even not making her a love interest is an interesting addition.
It maybe flirts a little bit with it, but it doesn't need to have the will they, won't they element to it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I already liked this movie before, but I think even talking through it, I'm like, and also watching it twice. I mean, I feel like I got just as much out of it the second time as I did.
Now I need to watch the black and white version
of Godzilla Minus One.
Yeah.
They did that, didn't they?
I know, yeah. They did. It's on Netflix too.
And we should probably have a whole other podcast episode.
Yeah,
just about
it's probably
that
really different.
and what the black and white did.
I bet it just made the CGI easier. Yeah, don't worry, you don't have to color it.
What if the original idea was the black and white, and they get the whole movie done, and he's like, "I got bad news for you guys.
They wanted in color.
I colorized this whole thing."
No. Anyway,
Spooktacular.
are you thinking your rating goes up then?
I don't know. I still feel like 4 sounds good to me.
I do feel like 4.5 would be a little bit grandiose, but it is a very very good movie.
It is a solid monster movie.
Yeah.
Compared to what we usually get nowadays for
Yeah.
monster movies.
Yeah, hopefully
I mean,
a little
this
bit more of a reorienting.
I hope this definitely sends a bit of a message to Hollywood that says, look, we could be making money hand over fist.
Well,
honestly,
I just can't see the next Godzilla movie, next Hollywood Godzilla movie doing well in this like new reality, this post Godzilla Minus One world.
I'd like to think so, but I think that there's
going to be more critical lens or like heightened criticism.
I hope
of it.
so. I just also think that there was a lot of people who maybe watched all of the new Godzilla movies, but that foreign language thing was a barrier
for sure.
And they didn't watch Godzilla Minus One. And so if you haven't seen it, then you don't really know what you're missing.
That's true.
But I would just think from a business standpoint, you're a Hollywood studio and you see this little movie that was made for $15 million and it looks just as good, if not better, than what you're putting out.
Probably better. And
Probably better.
Much more compelling.
And, we went over what they did differently.
Yep.
You could do that.
Yep.
Like, there's nothing stopping a Hollywood studio from just being a little bit more proactive in their visual effects.
Yeah, we're not gonna copyright that list. You don't even have to pay us for it. Keep your costs down.
I mean, if Hollywood was smart,
probably copyright that list.
Yeah, that's
They'll
true.
Pay.
If Hollywood was smart, they would just bring Yamazaki over and have him start making American movies.
Yeah. Like the studios did with like Otto Preminger and all those European directors in the 50s.
I just think from a purely economic, we like to make money reason, they should just start looking to Godzilla Minus One and start making action movies that focus on story and character and bring the visual effects in at the ground level and have a much more interesting attitude about them. And we would just have better Hollywood blockbusters.
Yeah.
Like we would have a better summer.
Yeah. Cord Jefferson makes a return in this episode.
Yeah.
Not only would you possibly make a lot more money.
Think about it.
On return on investment, you also don't need a movie to be a success. Like, where you're like, if this movie doesn't make it, we are done.
Right.
That's just such stupid business.
I actually think Hollywood's only going to survive if they switch to this. I don't think it'll survive if they don't do that.
I think so too.
So, well,
you heard it here first, Hollywood.
Yeah.
Gauntlet thrown down.
I mean, we've never done that at a Spooktacular before.
No.
Like told Hollywood how they could fix themselves.
Yeah.
So 'tis the season.
Tis the season, breaking new ground.
Anyways,
the fog has died down, so you might want to crank that up.
Yeah, I'll get it going again by the time we're done here.
Yeah.
We'll have the spooky ambiance back to 11. So anyways, we're best buds here on Godzilla.
Yeah.
Hope you guys listening have thought the same if you've seen Godzilla Minus One. Hopefully you've seen it if you've listened this long.
Yeah, yikes. We spoiled a lot.
Anyways, so with that said, and as we wrap up the Spooktacular, maybe we should pivot to our next episode.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what that's going to be.
Well, as you all know,
it's coming.
The holiday Spooktacular is followed by Tea-Hanksgiving. Our season keeps tizzing.
It tizzes from October straight into November.
That's right. And so we are picking our annual Tom Hanks movie.
Oh, yes.
And this year we're going with one that I've wanted to pick for the last couple years. We just didn't.
I feel like we've both been wanting to pick it, and we haven't said that out loud to each other.
Right. I don't think so.
We've kept it to ourselves.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, honestly.
Yeah.
How many years of doing Tea-Hanksgiving have you wanted to do this movie? And you just haven't... Either we picked a different one, or you just haven't said it.
Or I haven't thought of it. I think every year we've done Tea-Hanksgiving, I have thought, we should have done
I think I've thought every single year we're eventually going to have to do.
Yeah.
And there's a couple that fit that bill.
But this is the one that I've wanted. I've been like, I haven't seen it in so long.
I'll even
really
raise
want
you
to.
that.
Go
this
on.
is the one I feel like I've needed to rewatch because it's been so long.
Yeah.
I barely remember it. I think you've watched it more than I have.
I think I've watched it more than you, but I have not watched it more recently, I don't think.
Okay.
Probably. Watched this one a bunch when I was a kid. One of the few VHSs we owned.
Not my story.
Didn't own it.
Definitely didn't own it. I think I've seen it I think I've only seen it maybe twice.
Wow.
And I probably was like in middle school the last time I watched it.
Wow. I watched this a bunch when I was a kid, which is maybe a little odd. We're talking about 1995, Apollo 13.
There it is. Apollo 13.
Ron Howard, Gary Sinise, Kevin Bacon.
Kevin Bacon.
What's his name? Ed Harris.
Yes. Who could forget Ed Harris?
I did.
You did. But who could?
Just me. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. I don't anticipate it being a shockingly...
You forgot to mention, by the way, Bill Paxton.
Oh, Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton.
The late, great. Yeah.
So, for all these reasons, it's going to be a Tom Hanks celebration, but this year, we get to celebrate a lot of people.
Yeah. Admittedly, a lot of men. This is unfortunately not Hidden Figures.
This is not that NASA story.
Telling a different NASA story. But one that, like I said, I remember watching a lot and enjoying a lot as a kid. So
I remember Kevin Bacon making a beer bottle look kind of like
fairly sexual.
Fairly sexual.
Yeah, he does that.
I remember that
when
scene.
He's talking about how the two elements of the
spaceship
module connect.
Yeah. So I remember more of this movie than you think.
Yeah, you remember the one sexual line. This I feel like is going to be the closest T. Hanks giving experience. It's probably going to be That Thing You Do, where it was a movie I watched a lot and liked a lot and haven't seen in a while.
Okay.
And I think because of my experience with That Thing You Do, I'm not as apprehensive to rewatch it.
Because that was a good experience.
It was a good experience.
Yeah.
And I should know.
You gotta trust.
I gotta trust the Hanks.
Especially, you gotta trust 90s Hanks.
You gotta trust 90s Hanks.
He doesn't miss.
Yeah, there's a lot, man. So I'm just looking 90s Hanks. Bonfire of the Vanities was 1990. I don't think we'll ever do that one. Joe versus the Volcano. Radio Flyer. Well, he was barely in that.
Okay, so maybe like...
Already did League of Their Own. Sleepless in Seattle we haven't done. Philadelphia we haven't done. Forrest Gump we haven't done. Toy Story. Was that one we're ever going to do? Saving Private Ryan. Toy Story 2. Green Mile.
We have so much more Hanks to get to.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like...
Band of Brothers?
Where do you think... What was the start of the Hanks... We've talked about this before, and definitely Apollo 13's in that run, but what's the start where we really mean he couldn't miss?
League of Their Own.
Yeah. After that, I mean, what? It's that...
Sleepless in Seattle, Philadelphia, Forrest Gump, Apollo 13, Toy Story, That Thing You Do, Saving Private Ryan, You've Got Mail, Toy Story 2, The Green Mile.
Crazy.
What a run. We're not going to be hurting for giving thanks.
No, we're going to be given quite the thanks this year. Well, I guess we don't... I mean, you never know what
I'm
can
just
happen.
saying.
Yeah.
This is all built off our point that when you're giving thanks for Hanks, usually the returns are good.
Yeah. And we have been doing it for years. So people can go through the archives if they want. In fact, I encourage our listeners to go through the archives as you're waiting for the episode to drop.
That's right.
Give
thanks.
You can get started early.
That's right.
You don't got to wait for this new episode to drop. We've got a lot.
I think every year, I think it's an official T. Hanks giving tradition that we marvel at his run through the 90s.
Yes. I mean, you can expect, if you're listening on your podcasting app, you can actually just kind of skip forward probably a good 10 minutes at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear us raving about Tom Hanks. But why would you want to do that?
Yeah, why would you skip it? Would you want to do it every day? Do you want us to do this every episode? No, you don't. But that's part of T. Hanks skipping.
It's like skipping. We could not eat pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
Sure, you don't want pumpkin pie all year round.
Right.
You don't want it all the time.
And you may not even have a second piece or even a big piece.
No, but you're gonna have some.
Oh yeah, I gotta try the pumpkin pie. It's just from Costco. That's fine.
It doesn't matter.
I'll take it.
It doesn't matter where it's from.
Just give me a little slice. I'll just have a little bit.
Right. Put some whipped cream on there.
Yeah.
And you're not going to skip that. So I really don't think it's worth your while to skip through the beginning of our next episode where we talk about why we do Tea-Hanksgiving.
Yeah. Even though we're doing it now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're getting a jump start on it. But, this is still our spooktacular episode, so let's not get too into it.
No, that's right.
We're getting ahead of ourselves.
We're not Costco, where our Halloween decorations are up in July.
Right. No, let's give each season its due, and so let's just kind of stop the celebration there. Even though
let's pause it. We don't have to stop it.
I'm rearing to go, but
buddy, you don't have to tell me.
Well, let's hold it. This is a good tension, a good energy to keep for the next episode.
Part of it is the waiting,
and we get to talk about space and NASA.
That's right,
and astronauts.
Yeah,
it's gonna be fun.
This is our first space movie. I don't even know. We're 122 episodes in.
We've had to have mentioned that claim. We've probably mentioned
space,
the outer atmosphere in the universe at some point.
Yeah, we might have.
But don't quote us on that, because maybe we haven't.
We absolutely don't. We forget that we have done movies.
That's true. All right. So now you know what the next episode is. We really encourage you to go back and listen to some of our past episodes, find those movies that you enjoy and listen to those episodes. And so
let us know what you think.
Yeah. To listen to or comment on this or any of those past episodes, find us at canwestillbefriends.net or email us at feedback@canwestillbefriends.net. You can find us on Facebook at Can We Still Be Friends Podcast or Instagram and Threads at Can We Still Be Friends Pod. And if you'd like to leave us a voice message and be featured on the podcast, here's the thing. We actually lost our phone number.
Yeah, we did.
This is the end of an era, really.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been with us since the beginning.
Our first episode without the phone number.
I know. We don't have the phone number anymore, but we still would love to hear your voice. So if you want to leave us any sort of voice message, you can just use that recorder app on your phone and email us a voice memo.
As always, we'd love it if you could subscribe and leave us a rating or review at Apple Podcasts or any of the podcasting apps that let you leave reviews. Those ratings really help spread the word about our show. Can We Still Be Friends is written and produced by Ryan Ebling and Nate Goss, and edited by Nate Goss. Thanks for listening.
And we'll catch you next time.